Last week in our debut, I talked with Flat Earth Dave and said that I'm about being open minded. In fact, I'd call it radical openness. In this podcast, I'm going to explain what that is, talk about what that has to do with conscious creation, and invite you to embrace that perspective too. So, welcome to Fantasia. I'm your hostess, Laura Giles, and each week we talk about consciously creating a wonderful world together. And I believe that radical openness is a real important part of that. Think about it. Most of what we do is not creation. It's copying and modifying. Each year there are new models of cars and phones, but when's the last time someone truly invented different communication devices or a transportation device? What about a whole new animal or a brand new way of thinking or healing? It's seldom done. All of us are born with amazing powers of imagination. We imagine that there are monsters underneath our beds, that we can fly, that we can travel to other worlds, and that we can be any occupation that we desire. And then around school age, we all become creative dunces. It's true. We all have really incredible creativity quotients. And then around school age, the school system teaches it out of us. Life is no longer about what you can imagine, it becomes about thinking linearly. It's about getting the right answers that we all agree upon rather than coloring outside the lines and thinking new thoughts. In fact, the more original your thoughts, the less valued you are. So maybe you're thought of as stupid, slow, or at least eccentric. And we can't have that. We all have to fit in. Nobody wants to be the weirdo, after all. We all have to be popular, wear the same clothes, have the same haircut, and do all the in things. Just look around you at all the cookie cutter houses and all the off the rack clothes. We're clones who can't create anything or appreciate anything new. We bought the advertising that looking the same and acquiring what manufacturers are selling and getting it all through the magic of credit is not only desirable, but smart. They're brainwashed, really. And we have one way of seeing the world, and that's it. For most of us, that means we get a job, do good work, get married, have kids, take care of the house, climb the corporate ladder, succeed, buy stuff, retire, and die. And how many of you who have done that or are doing that are happy? Let me tell you, there are a lot of people in that situation who aren't happy, don't know why, and don't know what to do about it. After all, they're following the script. They're doing all the right things, and that's the problem. These people are my clients, so I know. And they have no space for radical openness. The radical openness is being willing to say why not, and what if. And when things go wrong, it's a willingness to say, what does this say about me? Instead of, what does this say about you? Or maybe, how could the opposite of what I believe to be true could be true? It's a way to grow and to create from the heart rather than from this preset template or the head. For example, Joe, and this is not his real name, comes to me for help. And he's in his 40s, has a good job, makes good money, has a wife and kids, and he feels like an imposter. It's a very common scenario. On the outside, he looks like he's got it all together. He has a nice car, nice house, and all the things that most people want. But he doesn't know who he is or what he wants. It's like he's been on autopilot and finds himself in this life that he isn't even sure that he wants. But he doesn't know what else to do. And I'm sure as heck doesn't know why he isn't happy. He feels like he has it all. There's lots of people like Joe. And the problem is that they're over controlled. Is there such a thing? Yeah, it's crazy. We think that control is a good thing, right? If we can get out of bed, be on places on time, curb our desires, and delay gratification, we'll become successful, right? That's what we're taught. We play the long game, get the degree, save, invest, and think things through, but we can be too analytical, too obedient, and too disciplined. When things get tough, we think, hey, my discipline and strategies worked. Let's get that. Let me just ratchet that up. And that's how we end up working 50, 60 hours a week, only putting our feet up 2 weeks out of the year, overthinking everything and waking up with anxiety. That doesn't sound like a recipe for happiness or heart-centered healing. Or That doesn't sound like a recipe for happiness or heart-centered living, does it? No way. What radical openness does is give you permission to question everything. And this can lead to amazing discoveries, cool explorations and experiences, meaningful connections, and explosive growth because at no point are we imagining that our path is like everyone else's path or that it's pre planned. It's a moment to moment experience. It's present moment focused and it's a never ending story. With the life plan type of living, there are goalposts and plans. You go from one milestone to another. There's judgment. Did you reach this one on time? Did you do it right? Did you do it well enough? Always grading and scoring. With radical openness, that all goes away. You can turn left, right, stand still, go backwards in one direction. It's just as good as another. You can redo the same thing over and over if you want to. We can even go in a direction that no one has ever gone before. Maybe I go up, maybe I go down, maybe I go on the diagonal. I envision it like a playground that comes into being right before your eyes as you make each choice. And really, isn't that the way life is? We fool ourselves into thinking that there's this past, present, and future, but there's only now. And each moment is crafted now. If we see it that way, all of life changes. But wait, I hear you say, don't we need orderliness, control, and standards? Yeah, we do. But we don't need to be slaves to that, nor do we need it to be in the extreme. The radical openness is about taking the middle path. It doesn't mean we abandon anything, we're just flexible. We keep in mind emotional well being and social connectedness because that's what tends to get lost when we're rigid, too disciplined, over controlled, and stick to morals, values, or rules in a dogmatic way. Nobody's here to be a slave to a job, a religion, relationship, or ideals. We're here to be divine earthlings. We're magical, and yet we're also childlike because life is always changing and we don't know what we don't know. So, what works in one moment or for one person may not work for another. And if we make a mistake, it's all good. We can pivot, stay humble, and give each other the same type of grace. If you work in tech, you know that these types of industries love to hire people fresh out of school. So, for one thing, you can pay them a lot less. But for another, they're not hardened by life yet. They still have some unique ideas about what's possible. So, they're the ones who are most likely to innovate. The old guys and gals have already been there and done that and are more likely to say that won't work. Well, it won't work if you don't try it. Having a willingness to try new things, take risks, and pivot are associated with higher self esteem, more satisfaction, more confidence, and more success. Now, imagine what your energy is like when you are beaming with enthusiasm every day. This is a really different energy from the over-controlled person because the over-controlled person is more likely to hide their feelings behind a mask. I mean, do you want someone to see your insecurity, mistakes, or fear of failure? No. So you learn to mask your feelings, and then nobody can get close to you because you aren't putting out that open energy. Trust me, we can all feel it. Everybody knows if you're open to relationships, experiences, or anything. The body's always communicating. But if you grow up around people who are masking, you may not learn to read it. And if you are masking all the time, you may miss other people's cues because you never learned them. For example, I just helped this middle-aged woman who is tormented because she feels she really missed out on the love of her life because she didn't respond to his flirting. She's second guessing if he was flirting, just making a passing comment, wanted her to give him his number, and on and on. And all this rumination and regret over something that happened 20 years ago because she didn't know how to read the room. It's something that never needs to happen. But just imagine that she grew up with radical openness. This hot young guy comes up, smiles at her, makes a comment about a party that's happening, and says she should come by. She smiles back and she says, where and when? Boom, they have the connection. It can be that easy. It is that easy when you're open and not anxious or anticipating all the what ifs. If you don't deal with a no until it actually happens, you have a lot more yeses. Or let's say it's more about work and someone has a problem. They can figure out how to get these widgets to the customer by the deadline. So one of the coworkers says, "Hey, have we ever tried this?" And then he spits out something that nobody's ever done. Well, you know what? That just may work. We don't have to just stay inside the box all the time. We also don't have to have it hit outside of the park every time. An idea is just an idea. But when we don't have to be perfect and can explore, it makes it easier to be present, authentic, and to connect from the heart because we're open. The energy is flowing and we're available. I think that disease is just about being closed down. We're withholding something, so energy, love, our own presence, forgiveness, something. We're not allowing ourselves to feel, not allowing ourselves to be in this moment, something. So we're doing the opposite of radical openness. When we're shutting down our expression and emotion, this not only leads to disease, but the epidemic of loneliness. And that type of energy goes along with judgment, negative emotions, anxiety, distorted thinking, and that kind of thing. I know people don't think that loneliness is about them. They think that they're misunderstood, they can't meet people, or they lack high quality people to trust. Let me tell you something. If you are good with you, you can connect with anybody because we all have the human experience in common. Doesn't mean you're going to like them all, but you won't have a loneliness problem because loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about feeling alone. You could be with the most wonderful people in the world, but if your heart isn't open and you're too afraid to connect, they won't appear warm and wonderful to you. You'll tell yourself a story about how they were just trying to be polite. They talk to other people more than you. You didn't fit in with their lifestyle or something that validates your feeling of separateness from them. So I know that there's a lot of mindset coaches out there. They talk about being positive and speaking positive things. This is their way of tackling this. I'm going to suggest that you scratch that. It's great to be positive, don't get me wrong, but it's not always authentic. And if used in the extreme, it can be toxic. What I would suggest instead is to cultivate radical openness. If something bad happens, accept it and wonder if there's something good about it. Explore what it can lead to. Consider all angles. Be open to the wonder that each situation holds. We live in a complementary dualistic universe, and every front has a back, every yin has a yang. So it's not some optimistic claptrap to say that every cloud has a silver lining. It's true. Be willing to imagine that possibility. If you don't get the job that you want, it really could leave the door open to a job that's even better for you. If your relationship ends because your boyfriend just got a job across the country and you couldn't go, that could open the door to you being at home with your sister when she has a tragic accident. Maybe your presence saves her lives. So there are so many ways to view every situation, and we really just get stuck on one. Our world becomes very small. And the chance of being unhappy or unsatisfied really increases because how often do we get exactly what we want, right? This doesn't mean that you have to like everything that happens or never see disappointments. I mean, think about how you communicate your inner experience. You don't have to be upbeat every day, but you can be sad and open. You could be frustrated and open to the possibility of things turning around or open to the way out that you didn't see. This attitude is what eliminates loneliness and creates a sense of tribe. When we're open, we create the potential for people to connect with us. We create a sense of belonging. When we are all in this life together, it's very hard to vote for things like war or walk past poverty and do nothing because everywhere you look, you see community. You see yourself. You aren't a member of your own household or family. You're the member of planet Earth. You're a divine earthling. I worked through retail for about 3 days. And the first thing they told me was to greet everyone who walked through the door. Was it for hospitality? No, it was for theft control. We are less likely to steal from someone we know. And so making eye contact and speaking to someone made them less likely to steal from the store. Can you see the big picture implications for making connections in your neighborhood, at school, or at work? Imagine what it would be like to have 2 or 3 people in your circle who lived that belief. Can you imagine what a difference that would make? For me, that would feel like I always have a safety net. That would feel like I can take those risks and do what my heart desires because no matter what, I'm not alone. In fact, my life has been like that. I've been a bit of a wild child with an unconventional path. And some people have said that I was a late bloomer. Some have said that I was an underachiever because I didn't follow the scripted life of a quote unquote successful person. But I've been happy. I've been fulfilled and I've done what I wanted to do. And where do you want to be at the end of your life? Sitting with a bunch of satisfying memories or being right and checking a lot of boxes? There's no right or wrong way to live your life. It is your life. So if you want to embrace radical openness, here are some tips to get you started. So first, be open to feedback. If something supports your beliefs or opinions, cool. If you get evidence that doesn't, accept that too. If you listen to people on both sides of the political spectrum, each side is absolutely convinced that they're right and the other side is wrong. Does that make sense? Nobody is universally right or wrong. This means that you're going to be right sometimes and wrong other times. And if you are open to all evidence, your chances of being correct and effective goes up a ton. But my favorite part of embracing this one idea is that it makes But my favorite part of embracing this one idea is that it naturally skews you to the middle path. You can't be an extremist if you're open to all ideas. You're far less egotistical because nothing's at stake. And I like humble people, don't you? So this is a big win. The second suggestion is to use radical openness as a way to grow and create self discovery. If you're always asking, what does this say about me? You'll begin to welcome criticism, but you will rarely get any because you're going to beat other people to the punch. You will begin to recognize flaws and weaknesses in yourself before others have a chance, and that leads to astronomical growth. One of the things that I often say is that we have a lot of old people, but we don't have a lot of elders. An elder has wisdom. An old person is someone who has survived, but hasn't necessarily grown or matured. And maybe this person looks the same at 70 that they did at 21. They had the same thoughts, opinions, and habits. If you never question anything, that could be you. If you never change anything, that will be you. Since the only thing you have any control over is you, I suggest that you question, do you really believe that? What if that were not true? What does this say about me? Is this what I really want? How can this be the best thing that ever happened to me? How might this experience strengthen me? What can I learn from this? If you're asking those types of questions, your sense of self-esteem will become really solid. You will always be in a space of growing, and everything that happens will happen for you and not to you. In other words, you're never going to be a victim, only a blessed and cared for sacred being. And which would you prefer, a helpless victim or a divine earthling? People can criticize, try to manipulate, and even leave you, and you're going to be okay. That's the best position to be in my opinion. Not because you will answer every what does it say about me question with, it says I'm right, I'm better than these people, or people are haters. No. If you're being honest with yourself, your answers might look more like, it says I wasn't being open-minded enough. Or it could say that I'm more insecure than I realized. But you know what? Those are okay answers. It says I can still grow. And I'm getting to know myself in a deeper way. When we confront our flaws and tender sides, it gives us more compassion for others because we can see why others get angry, withdraw, and are sad too. We've been there. We know what it's like. So it gives us a way to share in our humanity. Another thing you can do is to consider option C before you decide you know the answer. Typically, when there is a question, we think it's either A or B, or right or wrong, or yes or no. Whatever the options are, they're like polar opposites, like do I stay or do I go? And those may seem to be the only choices, but see if there's an option C. If there is, there may also be a D, E, and F. Should I stay or should I go? Seems pretty black and white. But what if I stayed in a job but worked from home? What if I stayed in the house but not in the bedroom with my partner to create some distance? What if I stayed in a program but took some time off to take care of other business? Sometimes things aren't black and white, and choosing a gray option is more effective and easier on the heart. Another thing you can do is catch yourself mind reading or expecting someone to read your mind. Be open to the ideas that you actually have to communicate your thoughts over and over. Today may not be the same as yesterday, and you can't take that for granted. I have counseled a lot of couples who weren't communicating because or both of them thought, I already know what she's going to say, so why bother? But let's say that I've been working with one of them. They have come around to seeing other options, and their partner assumes that they still are where they used to be. So they never give them a chance to change or grow because they don't believe it's possible. That's an avoidable loss. And yet it happens all the time. It's that, see, I told you that it wouldn't change type of attitude. Radical openness really is mindfulness. It's not wishful thinking or toxic positivity. It's engaging what is and being open for the next moment to be different. If all we see is one outcome, we aren't open to having anything different, so we shut the door on it before we can even see what happens. The same thing happens with relationships. If someone doesn't believe that they will find someone, they basically shut the door to it before it can even happen, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, this isn't easy, especially at first. We're going to get some negative feedback, either from others or when you open your eyes and realize that what you've been doing or how you're coming across is kind of like, oop, oopsie. Remember that being less than perfect doesn't mean you're a bad person. It might mean that you could level up your skills. It might mean that you've been hurt and you don't trust easily. It might mean that you overgive and need to learn better boundaries. I know we can feel uncomfortable if we think that we look bad and that other people can see it. Nobody wants to feel small or petty or mean or whatever. It's all good. Forgive yourself. Don't judge. It's probably not as big a deal as it seems. When it happens over and over to you and you don't die, you start to learn that it's just a part of the process of growing. And you may even begin to like it because it means that you're about to level up again. But radical openness isn't just about personal growth. It's about the way you see the world. I interviewed Flat Earth Dave to see if I could grow. He talked about a lot of things I'd never heard of before. And being a curious person, I wanted to know more. So I listened to some of the resources he talked about. I shared it in my private group. One of the members suggested that we have a gathering to talk about flat earth ideas. And we did. That's the kind of community that I want to belong to. Nobody's attacking anybody because they have a wild idea. It's like, that's interesting. Let's talk about it. Nobody is invested in having everyone believe the same way. They're just ideas. And expanding ideas expands what's possible, right? If all I know is red, I can only paint with one color. If I get to know blue and yellow, now I've got a whole lot more that I can do. And once I introduce green, white, and black, can you see how much more variety I can produce now? That's what I'm talking about. Being open makes life more fun and interesting. Now, just because something is possible doesn't mean I should create it or engage in it, but it's nice to have options. And if I'm creating from the heart, my choices are always going to be good for me and everyone else too. Being radically open also means that if I choose to create mayhem, I don't have to continue doing that. Maybe I'm angry and hurt, and I create ugliness and mistrust because that's a reflection of how I feel. It's what I know. If I'm radically open, one random act of kindness can change my whole way of being in the world. I heard this story online of a homeless guy who was huddled miserably in the cold near a doorway of a Starbucks. Lots of people walked by him without seeing him. But one guy noticed, and he went inside, and when he came out, he stopped to talk to the man and offered him a coffee. The homeless man looked up and saw humanity in his eyes. He saw himself reflected back as a person worth caring for, a person of value, and that changed his whole life around. Once he saw himself in that way, he began to act in that way. What happened is that his light came on. We all have that light, but negative things can happen and we forget it's there. We forget that it can never go out. But since we're not feeding it, it can seem as though it doesn't exist. Imagine that it's so, and it will be. Now, we have a weekly challenge in the group that can help anyone feel more alive and connected. And here is what I'm going to challenge you to do this week. Imagine that you are a divine being full of light. Nothing can put that out. Some days it's dim and some days it shines brighter than the sun, but it's always there and people can't help but respond to it. But notice what happens when you know it's there. That's all. It's just a fun little experiment that I want you to come back and tell me in the comments how it went. If nothing changes, that's cool. You risked nothing. But if you notice how amazing you are, maybe the doors magically open. If you get an incredible opportunity, wouldn't that be worth playing the game? You got nothing to lose. So the vibe here is getting established. And if it resonates with you, I hope you will subscribe to Fantasia so you get more inspiration to love, connect more, create, and grow. You're a creation being. And when we create from the space of love, we can end things like war, poverty, slavery, hunger, and pain. I truly believe that. And I want company for the ride. So join my free group. There's no monetary fee, but you do have to share yourself. We don't have any lurkers or dead weight in the group because everything is energy and we want to have vibrant, alive energy. And if that's you, you are welcome. Let me know your thoughts. I'm always curious to know what you think. Thanks for listening and see you guys next week. Ciao.
Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Spotify so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, why not show your love with a review? Thanks. See you next week.